Good morning, Dr. Vipra. Can we start?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Vipra. Can we start?
Good morning, sir. Yes, sir, we can start.
Right. Okay.
Morning, sir.
Morning, everyone. Thank you. First of all, thank you, everyone, for getting together on Sunday. I welcome you all to Clindamines career webinar. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, it's audible.
Am I audible?
Yes, everyone has responded on chat. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. So, first of all, welcome you all to the Clindamines webinar on the career opportunities for the pharma, life sciences, medical graduates and postgraduates in the field of life sciences, primarily in the area of clinical research, pharmacovigilance, data management, business analytics, and last few months post pandemic, I think the March 2020, the career in this industry, as a lot of other industries were struggling, and a lot of lockdowns impacted the various industries and their sector, this particular industry in the life sciences sector performed extremely well. Actually, it outperformed the overall industrial growth, and sector continued to grow at about 12% plus. And when the economy went down into the negative, the healthcare and the pharma sector actually grew 12%. Pharma and overall healthcare industry grew at about 20%. The sector is very exciting for the professionals who are qualified in this pharma, life sciences, MSc or BDS, BHMS, MBBS. There are several opportunities in this industry. The clinical research continues to be a very, very attractive sector for the life sciences, healthcare, pharma professionals. The clinical research will continue to attract the major investments from the global pharmaceutical companies. And the pandemic has also, in a way, presented a major opportunity for the life sciences sector, for the pharma sector, to bring in the newer investments in this sector. As a result of this, there are thousands of new sort of. I'm getting a message that people are not able to hear me. I would like to check again, perhaps, and.
It's audible. It's audible. Everyone can.
Audible. So maybe just a quick request: if you are not able to check your microphone on your phone or a laptop or a computer, please check your microphone in case you have trouble, because I think significant amount. The pharma sector continue to attract investments. Not only the COVID-19 related drugs or vaccines, but there are several other diseases. You have constant healthcare challenges in the form of the oncology, oncology, diabetes, cardiovascular, neuro. So there are large number of diseases where continuous investments are happening in the form of developing new drugs. Hence, the sector attracts good workforce, quality workforce. If you're qualified, again, Vinayak, I'll just hold on, take a break for a minute. Actually, I think there's still some people who are saying not audible. Can someone speak whether I'm audible?
You'll be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Sir, yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
So maybe I
Yes,
think,
sir.
please, some of participants, please check your devices, because majority of people are able to hear me. So if you continue to post the messages in between, so please check instead of your sort of a device or a phone or a laptop. Can I start again?
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the sector continues to attract the investments by top 100 global pharmaceutical companies, including large number of Indian pharmaceutical companies are now investing into the. Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Simran, you can check your system. Everyone is able to hear me, Simran. So if you're not able to hear, kindly check your system. Because Robin, Simran, please check your system. Everyone is able to hear. It's about your computer, perhaps. So if you continue to post messages, it disturbs other participants. Please avoid posting messages. Maybe check with, I think majority of the audience are able to hear me. Kindly check your system. So, so the sector continues to attract investments in the pharmaceutical new research space, and the industry is currently valued at about the R&D investments are currently valued at about $240 billion, and the companies continue to invest into this sector at a rapid pace. The outcomes of this industry are also the sectors like clinical data management. So clinical data management is an integral part of the clinical trials and the drug development process, where you are involved into the collection, integration, and the validation of clinical data, which you collect during the clinical trials, which is the most important piece during the clinical trials, because any errors at this level could really impact the quality of data and the safety and efficacy issues as well. One of the another important areas within the drug development and the pharma industry is the pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance is one of the very important segments today because it is to do with the safety of the drug, long-term safety of the drug. So we do the pharmacovigilance during clinical trials to ensure that the drug is safe. But post-marketing, we do the wider today pharmacovigilance, where we carry out the various activities to ensure that the drug continues to be safe, for which we have to collect the scientific data, the efficacy data, the safety data of the drug, and report it to the regulatory agencies into the various forms. And this process of pharmacovigilance is a regulated process, is a where the regulatory agencies are involved, there where there are regulations and the guidelines you have to follow. And this sector is presenting a massive opportunities for the people who are from the medical or the pharmacy background. For them, it's a major sort of a area of growth, and the sector will continue to grow at over 20% annually. And interestingly, the COVID has presented again a massive opportunity for the pharmacovigilance business, in India. So majority of the global pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and all are now actually outsourcing their pharmacovigilance process from India. So this has created major job opportunities, the major business opportunities for the people, the professionals who are from the pharma or medical qualifications. The sector continues to grow also in the terms of the number of hirings. If you see the period of COVID, which most companies when were not hiring, our industry, the pharma industry, the clinical research, pharmacovigilance, data management, actually the hiring went up substantially, and the salaries in the last 1 year also have improved substantially. So there is a salary growth, there is growth in the number of positions. And this sector, with the new clinical trials happening, new pharmacovigilance outsourcing projects which are coming to India, the next several years are going to be very, very exciting for the professionals who are from the pharmacy and the medical or the life sciences background. So with this, today my colleagues who specialize in the areas of clinical research, pharmacovigilance, data management will be talking to you in more detail that what do we learn in these programs, what happens in the pharmacovigilance or clinical research, and what are the job opportunities, what are the various positions. So they will discuss with you today all these things, and uh, my colleagues from the business team will keep you informed on the new batches which will be starting very soon in the March. So I hand over now this session to my colleagues who will take you through in a lot more detail about the pharmacovigilance and clinical research. Thank you, Dr. Vipra.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, all of you who have joined today for the demo session on clinical research, pharmacovigilance, and clinical data management. I hope I am audible to all. Vinayak or Rajat, could you please confirm?
Yes, Vikramam, you are audible. Everyone can confirm on chat.
I would also request Yamini, please don't make any markings. Everyone, please ensure that you are not marking on the slide.
If anyone has any queries, you can write down on the chat box.
So yes, any queries, any questions, please mention it in the chat box. We will be taking up all your questions at the end of the session together. So make sure that whatever questions you are having, you are writing down it in the chat box. So, thank you, sir, for enlightening the students with the tremendous growth opportunity that we have in the clinical trial pharmacovigilance and the clinical data management industry. And it's very true that pandemic situations has like given us a very negative aspect, but along with this there is Himanshu Patel, could you please ensure that you don't make any annotations on the screen? Because it will hamper the visibility of the slide. Others will not be able to see the information maybe properly. Uh, just give me a moment.
Vikramam, you can undo him, or can you undo this?
No, I would need to again share the slide. Just give me one
Yeah,
more.
I'll then ask him Anshu.
Okay. So basically, as very correctly mentioned, that the pandemic situation did bring lot of negative things with it. But for the healthcare industry, for the clinical trial industry, it was a time where we have seen lot of growth and the job opportunities. Also, there has been good increment in the salaries which is now being paid by the companies. The third very important thing which we have observed in the past 1 year is that now people do have an awareness on what exactly clinical trial is, because that this was a domain which was never existing. Like very few people knew actually that what is a clinical trial industry and what exactly is the role and what do we do in this industry. But with the lot of news that is flowing, and since past 1 year everybody has been eagerly waiting for the vaccine for it, now we are aware, even a lay person has become slightly aware that what clinical research is, and along with this what is the importance of this industry. So, I will quickly take you all through the overview of clinical research and clinical data management. Okay, so basically, we all know that, and everybody in our life has taken medication at some point of time. I think there is nobody sitting here who has never took a medicine, right? So how does these medicines reach us? How is it actually available to us? So it's available through a series of investigations, through a series of experiments. We researchers or the pharmaceutical industry, they cannot bring a new drug into the market without having sufficient evidence, without testing it on the human subjects, without having substantial amount of information or data pertaining to the safety and the efficacy. So you can see two key terms here. One is safety, the second term is efficacy. So safety is, in a very generalized term, safety means if you take a medicine, what are the side effects? In a very layman language, what are the side effects? So if you take a medicine, are you experiencing some kind of adverse events like nausea, vomiting, or there could be some serious adverse events like maybe birth defects or even the death of the subject. So basically, clinical research is a series of investigations, step by step done process, where any new molecule is tested in different layers or in different steps, which is called as phases. So it is tested in various phases in the human subjects to collect two kind of data. One is the data on safety, and the second is the data on efficacy, which means how well your product is working. For example, if you have a headache tomorrow and you take a medicine and the headache is, it's not going, it's still there, you are still experiencing the headache, there is no change in the intensity. So what do you generally say? The medicine is not working. So that means we are talking about efficacy, which means the medicine, the drug is not doing its intended action. Correct. So any pharmaceutical company will not market a product which is not doing the intended action. Why will some company invest money, will invest their resources, when eventually when it is into the market, it is not serving the purpose, right? Secondly, it's very important that your drugs, your medicines are safe, because if you bring an unsafe drug into the market, what is eventually going to happen? Eventually, when people are going to consume that product, it will cause harmful effects, which could have again difference in the severity. Some events are mild, you could have a mild rash. Some events can go as serious as leading to the death of the subject. So obviously any pharmaceutical company will not intend to bring a medicine into the market which has more number of side effects, more number of risk involved rather than the benefits. Correct. So if we look at the definition, or if we understand the meaning, clinical research are investigations in human subjects that generate, that produces safety and efficacy data for health interventions in human beings. So it's a series of investigations, it's a series of experiment, because we are still exploring information on it. Now, second very important thing is that there is a role of an agency which is known as regulatory authorities. Because when we are talking about the new products, when we are talking about new pharmaceutical ingredients, and you have to give that medicine to humans, you can't consider the humans, or you can't treat the humans as guinea pigs. You have to ensure that the molecule has been pre-tested, it has been tested in the laboratory or on the animal models, to ensure that it is safe enough to be given to the human subjects. So what exactly is done? What the investigations which has been conducted so far in the laboratories or on the animal models, they are submitted to the regulatory authority, which means we need to have preclinical or non-clinical data which has been collected from the previous studies, and that data has to be submitted to the regulatory authority, the authority which has the power to regulate the conduct of clinical trials, the authority which has the power to give the permission to market a product. Correct? So it is only conducted, your clinical trials are only conducted after satisfactory information has been gathered from the non-clinical studies, and regulatory authority and ethics committee approval has been provided, it has been granted. So there are two authorities which are responsible. One is your regulatory authority, which in our case, in case of India, is the CDSCO, which is Central Drug Standard Control Organization. Along with this, the ethics committee of the hospitals where we are planning to conduct the clinical trials also need to approve. Their approval, their permission is very important, because imagine you can't go in somebody's house without their permission. Similarly, some outsider cannot randomly come and start doing a clinical trial in a hospital. They will need the permission from the hospital, they will need the permission from the ethics committee, which is going to ensure that everything has been taken care of, the patients will be safeguarded, the patients will not be subjected to any unethical practices, there is consent which is involved, so everything is to be taken care of. Okay, we then come to the next important information, which is whenever we do a clinical trial, we have three important things. One is the experimental unit. Experimental unit term is used for the patients on whom the clinical trial is conducted. Okay, so for example, tomorrow, if I am participating in a clinical trial, I would be known as the experimental unit, because I will be taking the new product, I will be taking that unlicensed medication. The second term is intervention. Intervention is used for the medications, the new molecule which is provided, which is administered to the patients. So that is your intervention, because you are testing that intervention. You are giving that product to the human subjects and checking, testing, collecting data to know whether that product is safe and efficient or not. And the third important thing is evaluation. So evaluation means at the end what happens once you have given the product to the human subjects and you have collected data. Now you want to know what is the outcome. Has the patient been benefited? Did the patient's disease condition worsen, or the patient's disease got resolved, or the patient had no effect? So that is what you are evaluating. Okay, a very simple day-to-day example could be, For example, when you give an examination, what happens? It's evaluated to know that how much you have scored. Similarly, for patients, the evaluation is done to know how much benefit or harm has been has happened to the patient, to every single patient, and collectively also. So for example, if you have tested the product on 500 patients, so what is the overall outcome, what is the overall result? Out of 500 patients, how many patients got benefit, how many patients suffered from some serious adverse events, how many patients died, how many patients did not have any benefit or any risk? So that entire thing has to be evaluated, and further this information has to be submitted to the regulatory authority. So the outcome, the evaluation, the result has to be submitted to the regulatory authority so that they can give further permission to carry out the next phase or to market the product. Okay. Now we have, this is basically in a slide where you can see the overall picture of the clinical trial process. So we start with the drug discovery, and drug discovery obviously happens even before your preclinical study, because to start with the clinical trial you first have to identify the molecule with which you are planning to do the investigation. So all that is a part of your drug discovery, where you have different steps to discover, to find out the most suitable product which can be taken further in the clinical trial process. After the drug has been discovered, we move to the preclinical studies. And the numbers that you can see here, for example, it's mentioned 10,000. 10,000 means when we start with the drug discovery process, we might start with, for example, 10,000 molecules. So 10,000 is not a fixed number. It could be 5,000, it could be 7,000, it could be 10,000, it could be 15,000. It is a variable number. So it's just given for an example here. So you might start with 10,000 molecules, and then eventually only 250 molecules may enter your preclinical stage. So what happens to your rest of the molecules? The rest of the molecules may not have all the required prerequisites, because if what happens is, like, if you have 10 people who are going for a job interview, now all 10 are not selected. There are some people who are selected for the next round, whereas some people are dropped. Out of 10, maybe 5 people are taken further for the next round, and the rest 5 are not taken. Why? Because they might be lacking in some of the skill sets, some knowledge gap may be there. There could be n number of reasons. Similarly, out of all the 10,000 molecules, we may only take 250 molecules for the preclinical studies and leave the other behind, because those remaining molecules do not satisfy the prerequisites for the study. Okay. Then in the preclinical stage, you will perform the testing on the animal models, and you will do the testing in the laboratories. Okay. Further, moving ahead from the 250 molecules, you see in a phase 1 study, we are only having 100 molecules, which means again 150 are left behind because they are not satisfying the further requirements. Maybe the molecule is toxic, maybe the molecule is showing some mutagenicity potential in the animal models. Again, there are different reasons, variety of reasons. Another very important thing you can see here, there is a term IND filed. So what is an IND? IND is basically an application which is submitted to the regulatory authority, and through this application, they are seeking permission to conduct the human trials. So you can see it's very important that before we even test the drug, on the human subjects, we have to tell the regulatory authorities and we have to take their permission that this is the data which we have collected from preclinical studies, and based on this data, we want to further do the clinical trials. Not only this, they also have to submit a justification that why are we planning to do the clinical trial? What is the need of doing the clinical trial? So there are again two very important things apart from, like if you see an IND application, it has lot of information, but again two very important thing is that it should justify the need of the clinical trial, and it should justify that sufficient investigation has been done in the preclinical stage and it supports the conduct of clinical trial on the human subjects. Now in a phase 1 clinical trial, in general, mostly your phase 1 studies are conducted on patients, whereas there are certain exceptions where, your phase 1 clinical trials are done on healthy volunteers, but there are certain exceptions where it is also done on patient groups. For example, if you are doing a clinical trial involving oncology medication. So you will not do that testing on the healthy volunteers. You would perform that testing on the patients itself. Now, from phase 1, we move to phase 2, where the sample size could be few hundreds. It is again tested for mainly efficacy. We move further to phase 3, where the main objective is safety and efficacy. The sample size is around 1,000 to 3,000 patient groups. After the phase 3 clinical trials, another application is submitted to the regulatory authority, which is known as NDA, that is New Drug Application. And new drug application review is done by the regulatory authorities and it takes time. It may take around 6 months, it may take around 10 months for the regulatory authority to review the application. Okay. So there are pharmaceutical companies who may perform a phase 3B clinical trial in the time frame in which their NDA is getting approved. And once the NDA is approved, the phase 3B clinical trial stops. Post that, we have a phase 4 study which is known as post marketing surveillance. So when you see the overall process, it may take around 12 to 15 years for the entire drug discovery and development. Although in cases of emergency, medical emergency, what we are experiencing now, you may see that this entire process is expedited because there is a need to bring a drug into the market as soon as possible for the benefit of the society. Now, when we have a look at all these processes where we are talking about human subjects, so it has to be regulated. And you will see that not only in the clinical trial industry, your clinical trial, your pharmacovigilance, and your clinical data management, there are regulations everywhere. There are regulations, there are guidelines, and it is mandatory. It is absolutely essential that we follow all these regulations. And there is a reason why we have these regulations, because when you go back into the history, you will find lot of tragedies. So in today's session, I would not go into deep on what the tragedies were, but there has been series of tragedies in the past where the patient's rights have been violated, the patients were not consented for participation in the research, there was not sufficient data pertaining to the safety and efficacy of a drug before it was administered or before it was marketed. The patients were given false information, the product was mislabeled. So there were a lot of reasons due to which these tragedies actually took place. And then it was understood that we have seen so many tragedies, and it is very important that whenever we are carrying out an investigation on the human subjects, we we have to regulate it. We have to ensure that proper guidelines are in place and it is followed by everyone who is involved in the clinical trial industry. And that is another reason why the industry needs people who are trained, who are aware of these regulations. Say tomorrow if you join a company, they would expect that you should be aware of these regulations because of a very simple reason that no matter which domain you enter, everywhere you would be dealing with, or you are directly or indirectly involved with the patient safety, and you have to ensure that proper care has to be taken for the data, and for that you should have an understanding on the regulations. So the regulations are mainly to ensure that new drugs will be safe, effective, and it will provide the maximum benefit for the patients. Second reason is to ensure that clinical trials are conducted in an ethical manner where the patients are respected, the patients are provided maximum benefit, and we as researchers ensure that there is no harm done to the patients participating. Next important objective is documentation. Now, in the clinical trial, pharmacovigilance, and data management industry, you will also see that there is a lot of emphasis on documentation. So, what is documentation? Documentation is basically preparing a record, making a record, keeping that record for future. You have to ensure that your entire research data is written down somewhere, recorded in the form of audio video recordings, or kept in the form of softwares, archived in the form of some electronic manner, in a digital manner, and it is safely and securely kept for any future audits and inspections. Because tomorrow after 10 years maybe somebody wants to see that what did you do 10 years back when the product was tested, when it was when clinical trials were conducted using that molecule. So how will they check it? They are only able to check it with the help of documentation, with the help of records that you have maintained. So documentation is absolutely essential. And another reason is to ensure that clinical trials are conducted by qualified staff. So, whichever regulation you pick up, you will notice that it's mentioned that it is done by qualified, experienced, and trained staff. So, it's important that the person is trained in GCP, is trained in clinical trial regulations, has an understanding on the local regulations. In addition to this, there has been amendments, there has been changes in the regulations from time to time because of the change in complexity, because of the change in the kind of diseases that we have seen in the past. The very recent example is the COVID, where we all know that there has been mutations in the virus, and every now and then we are coming to know that there is a new strain. So the disease has also become smarter. It is also getting complex day by day. So we have to ensure that our regulations are also at par with the standards, or is able to meet the requirements. Okay, because if your disease is getting complex and your regulations are same old regulations, you may not have proper methods, proper technologies to do the clinical trial effectively. Another reason is because of the changes, because of the advancement in technology. We are now using artificial intelligence, we are using softwares, we are using different other techniques for doing the clinical trial, pharmacovigilance, and data management. So the regulations also should be at par with the same requirements. We are utilizing electronic data instead of paper based approach. Earlier, if you go back into 90s era, you will see that mostly the clinical trials were done on a paper based system. major of the majority of the trials. Now when you see the picture, majority of the trials are done where softwares are involved. So obviously when we are doing something which is electronic, which is software driven, you have to ensure that your regulations also meet those standards. Okay. And lastly, to increase efficiency. So, a glimpse of all the regulations that we have in the clinical trial industry. So, we follow ICGCP guidelines, and which has been recently updated in 2016 in the form of E6R2. USA has their own regulations, which is 21 CFR and 45 CFR. CFR is Code of Federal Regulations. Then in India, we have Schedule Y, which has been replaced by the new drug and clinical trial rules in the year 2019. We have the Indian GCP, and we also have our own ICMR guidelines. So, as a part of the course, as a part of the curriculum, each and every guideline is trained, and every student becomes well versed at the end of the program, so that when they enter the industry they have a sound understanding of these regulations. In the US FDA regulations, there are few very important, like 21 CFR Part 11, which is for electronic records, mainly for the reason because we are using softwares. Then we have different other regulations pertaining to patient protection. Then, when we are conducting a clinical trial on children, when we are conducting a clinical trial on geriatric, that is your old age patients, we also have regulations pertaining to the applications. Remember, we talked about two applications, IND and NDA. So we have guidelines in place into like what should be a part of these applications, what should be included. So, in order to do a clinical trial, the minimum standards, the minimum requirement is we have to follow ICGCP, and we have to follow the country specific regulations. So, for example, you are a part of a clinical trial, and which is being done in India. So, you should be aware about ICGCP, you should be aware about the Indian regulations, the Indian GCP, the new drug rules, and the ICMR guidelines. These are the few regulatory authorities, regulatory bodies, or regulators. At multiple places, you will find different terminologies, but they all are synonyms: regulators, regulatory authorities, regulatory bodies. So in USA, we have the US FDA. India, we have the CDSCO. As I said, it is Central Drug Standard Control Organization. Europe, we have EMA, which is European Medicines Agency. In UK, we have MHRA, that is Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency. Canada, we have Health Canada. Likewise, our other countries also have their own specific regulatory bodies, and they might have some additional regulations specific to their country as well. So as a part of the program, you also learn about those important regulations. Now, coming to the people who are important in the clinical trials. So, investigators are mainly the doctors, the physicians, the dentists who are conducting the clinical trials. Because obviously, in order to take care of the patient, to provide medical supervision to the patients, you need a doctor. You can't rely upon a layperson to carry out the medical decision. So, an investigator would be involved. Subjects are the patients who are participating in the clinical trial, who are getting the new molecule, or who are receiving the comparator agent. So those are your patients, your subjects. Sponsors are the pharmaceutical company or the agency which provides funding for the conduct of clinical trial activities. It could be pharmaceutical companies, it could be different government bodies also. Like, for example, there are research which is funded by ICMR, which is funded by DBT, which is funded by different other bodies. Then we have ethics committee, the bodies, the independent bodies which are functioning at the hospital level, and they provide permission for the conduct of clinical trials in their hospital, in their institution. Then we have the monitors, which is most of you must have heard the term CRAs, Clinical Research Associates. So these are monitors who go to the site, who visit the hospital, who check or monitor at frequent intervals that how the trial is being conducted. Okay, because they have to ensure that all the data, all the information which is collected is true, it's accurate, it's credible information. And lastly, in this entire process, with lot of people acting together, what are we getting? We are getting data, we are getting information, we are getting medical data, we are getting data pertaining to safety and efficacy, and that data is evaluated and submitted to the regulatory authority. Moving ahead, we talk about the overview of clinical trial process. So before any clinical trial is conducted, no matter, it could be an oncology study, it could be an asthma study, it could be an ophthalmology study, every study, we start with the clinical development plan, where we have to plan how the study would be conducted. Okay, for example, if you go on a trip somewhere, you plan, you make your plans, that where are you going to visit, what items will you carry, what will be the duration of your stay, what are the things that you need to take care of. So basically, in a similar manner, whenever we have to do a clinical trial, we need to do planning. We have to plan that how long the study will go on, what will be the objective of my study, and based on my plan, we have to develop the required documents, like the protocol, informed consent document, different templates which will be used, patient sheets which will be used for recording the patient data. That is all done before we start the conduct of the clinical trial. Then as we move ahead, we have the next step where we have to choose the different hospitals, because hospital is the place where your clinical trial is conducted. If you have been following news from the past 1 year, you must have noticed that every time in the news it reflects that a COVID study will be done in AIMS Delhi or in some other location. So what are these? These are basically the hospitals where your clinical trials will be conducted. And it is very important that we choose good hospitals, we choose hospitals which have good number of patient population, right? Because at the end of the day, what do you need? You need patients to participate, or you need healthy volunteers to participate. So obviously you will be going to places, you will be searching for places where you get patients, right? So in the pre-study activities, we select those sites, we select those hospitals which have all the required resources to do the clinical trials. And based on the things that we are able to find at the site, based on the requirements, if the site is satisfying those requirements, that site, that hospital will be selected for doing the clinical trial. And once the site is selected, the ethics committee will provide permission, the regulatory authority will give permission, and then we would start with the clinical trial process. Now, once the clinical trial process starts, it means that we will now start recruiting patients. Now we will start selecting patients for clinical trial. And once the patient is selected, selected, we are administering the product preparations, the study drug or the comparator agent, and data will be collected. At this point of time, your monitors will be responsible for monitoring visits. As and when monitoring visits are conducted, they will be evaluating, they will be going through the information, and they might generate queries. They might generate questions based on the data. For example, if there is an information which is not clear to them, something has been written by the site, something has been written by the person at the hospital, and they are not able to correlate it. So what they are going to do, they will ask queries, they will ask questions, they will ask the hospital people to clarify, they will ask the CRCs to like confirm that what is the correct information, what is the accurate information, is it right, is it wrong. So they cannot process the data without seeking clarification. Okay, so that is our query resolving. Once you enter the program, you will be having again a very elaborate understanding on what a CRF is, how the queries are resolved, what are the techniques of resolving query, how a paper-based query is resolved, how the queries are resolved in case of softwares, because we also utilize softwares for providing the training to the students, so that once you enter the industry, you also have a confidence that you are aware of the software, you are aware of how it functions actually. And after the clinical trial is completed, we have the end of the study. The data analysis will take place, and finally, the clinical study report is generated. Lastly, all this information would be submitted to the regulatory authority requesting for giving permission to market the drug. Along with this, the pharmaceutical company also has to publish their findings in different publications, in the journals. It should be accessible to the public. It's very interesting to see that now none of the information pertaining to the clinical trials is hidden. Before we start the trial, the information is in the public domain. After the trial is completed, the outcome is also on the public domain. So anybody can go to the websites, visit those websites, and see the information that is available. Then we come to the role of clinical data management. Now, as the term suggests, clinical data management. So, clinical data management is basically a domain where all the clinical trial data, all the clinical trial information which has been collected is checked, it's evaluated. And what is the reason for evaluation? The only reason why we evaluate this data is to ensure that the information is accurate, it is complete, it's logical, it's consistent. Okay, for example, you get degree from your university, and you notice that in your name, for example, if somebody's name is say Abhinav. Okay, now if the name is Abhinav and the V is missing, what do? You ask the university to correct it. Why? Does it matter if V is there or V is not there? Obviously, it matters. Okay. Similarly, in a clinical trial, the information, the data which is collected, it matters. Every single bit of information matters. Whether it's the patient's age, whether it's the patient's weight, whether it's the patient's physical examination, the time at which the patient took the medication, every bit of information is important. And the clinical data management team, they review the data, they validate the data to ensure that this information is correct, because they will not process, they will not consider a data which is not correct, which is not accurate, which is wrong, which is illogical. So data management ensures that part. Along with this, the data management people are also involved in designing the electronic case report form. So like we have a paper based case report form, there are also people in the CDM team who ensure that electronic case report forms are designed. So a person should have sound knowledge of clinical trials to enter even in a clinical data management industry, because it's correlated. Once you have an understanding of clinical research, then eventually you will be able to understand and correlate it with the clinical data management process. So for clinical data management, there are a lot of softwares which are now used by the industry. Like we have Oracle Clinical, we have ClinSoft, Rave, Open Clinica, MyClin. In our training, we provide the training on ClinSoft to the students, and along with this, we also provide the access for 30 days to every registered student so that they can practice themselves and be well versed with the different fields of the software, and they are comfortable using the software. So once you have an understanding of one software, you will be able to apply that skill and be able to work on any other kind of softwares. Then we have the SAS, which is a tool to analyze the clinical trial data before submission to regulatory authorities. So SAS help you to reach to the final conclusion, that is, in order to prepare the final reports or the clinical study reports. This is an overview of the syllabus which is covered in the clinical trial industry, where every topic which is important, which has to be known by a fresher student, is taken care of. And uh, not only the theoretical portion, we also ensure that for every topic you are also given practical hands-on, because the more of practical activities, the more of practical assignments you do, the better it is, because then you will be able to apply your theoretical knowledge to the practical aspects. Similarly, for clinical development also, this is the list of the syllabus that is covered. The focus of the training is to provide a uniform training at all the like centers or all the faculties. So we have a lot of faculties who take the training sessions. So we ensure that the training is uniformly given by each one of us. The syllabus is structured, which is reviewed, which is updated as per the industry requirements, as per any changes in the industry. As I said, that it's practical oriented session where you are also given practical assignments. Assessments are carried out at regular intervals, so that we have an understanding that, or we are able to assess that how much the student is able to gauge, how much the student is able to understand and apply it. Coming to the growth ladder, so as sir tell all of you in the beginning of the session, that the industry is growing day by day, and this is a glimpse of the growth ladder. So once you enter the industry, you would enter the industry as a fresher. As a fresher, you have different job roles, like you have a CRC, you have regulatory specialist, regulatory record specialist, you have CTA, you have your clinical data reviewer, clinical data validator, ECRF designers, and n number of opportunities. And once you are into the industry, it is a, an ever growing industry, and within a period of, you can say, around 10 years or 12 years, you can expect to become a project manager. The only thing which the industry sees in a candidate is obviously the right knowledge and the right technical skills, the attitude, the confidence, the zeal to learn, the zeal to progress further. Okay. So this is how you can see you can move ahead in the role of a CTA, then a senior CTA, then you have CRA level 1, 2, 3. You could become a team leader, assistant project manager, a project manager eventually. So as compared to any other industry, because for a person with the life sciences background, there are different domains, but when you see the other domains and when you see this industry gives you tremendous growth opportunities. So with this I would like to conclude my session, and I would now request my colleague Dr. Gaurav Grover to brief all of you on the pharmacovigilance related aspects, and then we would take up all your questions at the end.
Okay,
Thank you
thank you.
all for your patient listening.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Vipra. Such a lucid, explanation on the requirements in clinical trials. And now we will be looking at some more detail on the pharmacovigilance domain. When we talk of drug safety, there are numerous names given to pharmacovigilance. Some would call it, medical vigilance, or safety, drug safety. Uh, so these are again used interchangeably, and so let me just try to share my screen with all of you. Just a moment. Like we are discussing on the pharmacovigilance, that is also many times referred to as drug safety. I always start my session with a very interactive poem, which has been given by a famous medical researcher, Dr. So just a moment. Let me see if I can. So this talks about, again, when we talk of pharmacovigilance is nothing but looking at the adverse reactions or the adverse events which are happening. Some, as we call in common parlance, side effects, right? So there is this very interesting poem, and this will give you a understanding beforehand, before you know of anything else, on the side effects, as you call in common parlance, or the adverse reactions that we say in medical terminology. So this poem is very interesting. You just, I will read it through for you, and then at the end we'll try to understand from this. Okay. So again, there's this poem which says that there was once a man who had little hair. He said, I want something growing up there. He called his doctor. So hard to reach here. Please send a prescription to me for propecia. So which is finasteride, right? This is for the hair loss. Okay. He was quickly hirsute. So he's got, hair now. It was really pleasant, but lo and behold, he could not be tumescent. So he called up the doctor. I am going to Niagara. Please fix me up with a dose of Viagra. So he wanted sildenafil citrate because of the adverse reactions, because of the effects of the medicine, which was finasteride, right? Now he was back on the scene when a pill he did take, but he got paresthesias and a wicked headache. This was not good. He didn't feel right. So he took 5 or 6 Motrin, that is ibuprofen tablets, in the heat of the night, right? So for that, what did he do? For the paresthesia and the headache, which was there because of Viagra, he took up again ibuprofen tablets, Motrin, right? His headache just vanished. He felt good indeed until he developed gastroesophageal bleed. So what happened because of the drug? Again, it caused gastric irritation and gastroesophageal bleeding. He called up doctor. I feel like a wreck. A prescription was written for some Prilosec, which is omeprazole, which is for stopping the excessive secretions, acidic secretions, right? Okay. His stomach felt better, but now something scarier. So what happened? Now there was something scarier. Erythema and pruritus. It was urticaria. He was getting mad. Was his doctor a quack? He was really getting irritated. What is happening? Why is this happening? Right? Was his doctor a quack? His itching resolved with a Medrol dose pack. So what was given to him? Methylprednisolone, again a steroid, to reduce the effects, the irritation, the erythema, the pruritus or the urticaria which had happened. Right? Then he got much less itchy. So what happened is the use, he got less itchiness, but matter of factly, his face was soon covered with purulent acne. So what happened because of that? He got all acne all over his face. Okay. He called once again. Was he going insane? He called in script. So he took Accutane, right? So what the doctor now prescribed to him for the acne, he said you should use Accutane, which is isotretinoin, right? His acne abated. Now his acne is resolved, right? His face smooth without doubt, but his drain got all clogged when his hair all fell out. So what has again happened? He's lost all his hairs, right? So again, the conclusion that we are drawing from the poem is we are who we are. So here's my benediction. You can't change your life with a simple prescription, right? So now you understand the reason why, what we're trying to do in pharmacovigilance. Let's go back to, the slide on pharmacovigilance. Now, what we are looking at in pharmacovigilance is the effects of various drugs, right? The medicines as the most appropriate term to use. Drug again can be used in various other connotations like, the dependence part or the addiction part. So that is why you would prefer to say medicine, right? But in pharmacovigilance, interchangeably, since drug has been used from the time long period, so that is why you would have drug or medicine used interchangeably. Now, so this is a science. Again, pharmacovigilance is a field which has evolved over a period of time, and like clinical trials which was being discussed earlier, pharmacovigilance has come up from finding out new therapies and their effects once you start selling them, once you start giving it to larger populations, because when these are in the developmental phase, like Dr. Vipra was saying, there will be thousands of lead molecules from which you will arrive at one molecule, and then each of these molecules will be tested in controlled environment. You would have a trial where you will look at only patients who are meeting the criteria. So you would exclude the special populations like the pregnant women or the lactating women or children, pediatric population or the older population, right? Geriatrics. We would also not include populations like, uh, the ones with renal impairment or hepatic impairment. Yes, because of the risks associated. So it is not ethically right to include those populations and put them at unnecessary risk during the development, because that time we are testing a new molecule, right? So what happens is that during the development phase you would not get that many events, you would not know of the adverse reactions which are going to happen with the drug, right? But eventually, once you start marketing a drug, when it comes into the market, you will have more people who are exposed to a particular drug, right? So then what can happen is you would see events which are not noticed at the time of development, right? Most of you would have heard of drugs like cetirizine, which was anti-allergic. It was developed as a class of anti-sedating drug right? But then when you see it in real practice, once it was marketed in the development phase, it was thought to be non-sedating. But now, if you actually know, in the post-marketed scenario, you would find, people feel sleepy after taking cetirizine. Why so? Is because of the variations and again rare occurrences that will only show up once you have more exposure of a drug, right? And so then the population, it will be dependent upon the extent to which it is available. Like I said, in the trial phase, in the clinical trial phase, you would have limited population. You will have a small sample size. Yes, a randomized study, maximum you might have 100 patients. Yes, but when you start marketing, then you would be able to see those rare events which will happen, say, one in 1,000 or one in 10,000. Yes, they will only come up or you will be able to notice them once you reach to a larger population, right? So, as per the definitions given by the World Health Organization, again, pharmacovigilance has been defined as a science and activity which is relating to trying to detect, then assess these reactions, understand them, and prevent these effects or any other drug related problems occur. Our eventual goal in pharmacovigilance is on safety of the patients, right? It has been derived, again, this term medical, medically has been derived from two combination of words, which is pharmaco, which is a Greek origin, that would mean a medicine or a drug, and vigilare, which means in Latin, keep watch of, be aware or keep an alert, right? That is what is involved in pharmacovigilance. We are looking at the study of the effects because of the drug, what adverse effects or what untoward effects are being produced, right? So that is what we look at in pharmacovigilance. Now, in pharmacovigilance, like I was explaining to you, you have a lot of terminologies that you would come across. So there are, terms like adverse drug event. Now, an event could be anything which is, not expected. It is, something, any medical untoward occurrence that happens at any dose after the use of a drug. Say, I take a medicine and after that, I go out and I meet with a road accident. Now, this, thing which has happened, I never expected that I will have an accident, right? This is an untoward occurrence, but it may or may not be related to the drug, right? So even without relationship, anything that goes abnormal, anything untoward that happens after the usage of a medicine, we call it as an adverse event, right? And then we have a concept of adverse drug reaction. What is the difference between the two? Now, event, like I told you, there may or may not be a relationship, but in a reaction, the relationship between a drug and an untoward occurrence or a abnormal or a noxious, occurrence is there. And again, we are looking at usual doses of therapy. So in the adverse event, it can be any dose that we are getting an event, right? But in adverse drug reaction, it is always the usual therapy dose that we use, right? For which we may have a abnormal reaction, right? Okay. Then when it comes to, there are other terminologies that you will come across in pharmacovigilance related to the seriousness. Now, an event that happens which is untoward medically, which we do not know whether it is related or not related, can be serious. Now, there are various criteria that are defined for making a product as serious, right? A report of a adverse event, we consider few criteria to call it a serious event. So those are like if suppose it is causing death in a patient, right? Or it leads to life-threatening condition, right? So the maybe the patient goes into coma or goes, has anaphylaxis, could be anything, right? Which is threatening for his life. So that event we will, and if that happens, we will consider that event as a serious event, right? And there can be other conditions like the patient requires to be hospitalized. I may need to treat his condition, like say he's had an urticaria or some inflammatory reaction. So I might need to admit him in the hospital. So if I need to admit him, then that becomes a serious event. Yes, then there can be other scenarios like I have a disability which is persistent in nature, right? And that is irreversible. I cannot do anything about it, right? It persists for a period of time after the usage of the drug. That would again be a seriousness criteria, because it is causing a disability in the person, right? And the patient is getting affected. It could also be that this drug that I have taken can result in congenital anomalies or birth defects. So, like Dr. Vipra was mentioning in our session previously, there are a lot of tragedies, medical occurrences which have happened in healthcare, where patients were exposed to medicines which have caused deaths or malformations, congenital anomalies in children, right? So the most standard example that is given out is thalidomide tragedy, right? So this drug thalidomide was given to pregnant women, saying that it is very safe, you should use it. But then eventually what happened was a lot of deaths happened. More than 4,000 deaths happened because of the use of thalidomide. And even with deformities and malformations, uh, children born without limbs or in non-functional limbs, right? So those would also categorize a drug as a serious drug, because naturally if something like this happens, that is a point of concern. It is of grave implications. So that is why we would consider those as serious. Also, if suppose the treating physician or the doctor sees that there is a sudden spurt of events now, I see that either the nature, that means the way the event was seen earlier in trials, maybe it was a very rare occurrence. Now I see that it has become very common. It is happening in almost all the patients, right? So then I would consider it a serious event, because the nature has changed. It could also be, like I said, the frequency of the occurrence has changed. So maybe earlier, like I said, in case of numbers going up of a particular event, it was very rare, but now it is becoming very common. Yes, so there we are having a change in the frequency. It could also be the severity changes. Earlier, the event was very mild in nature in the development, in the trials. But once you start giving out to larger population, maybe you're seeing altogether new events, or events which are more severe in nature, right? So then also that would make it a serious event, right? So these are some of the criterias where the doctor who is treating or the physician who is treating can categorize the events which are there as serious, right? There are some other terms which are published now in the medical domain, which is being published by the European Commission, which are called as the important medical events. Again, those will include, a lot of blood disorder, conditions, specific, teratogenic conditions, which are also, if those are reported outrightly, you need to consider those events as serious, right? So there are various terminologies again related to seriousness when it comes to pharmacovigilance, right? And like I explained to you, the severity part. So if the event is becoming more severe with time, it was very mild in nature, it was, initially it was just rash, but now it is developing into urticaria, right? Or more, it is aggravated to the extent of Steven Johnson syndrome, right? So then such, increase in the severity would mean that we need to have more monitoring of those events. You need to detect them early and then assess them, so that you can prevent their occurrence. Yes. So that is the intent. We want to save our patients. We want to ensure that they are safe for use. Right. So that is the intent. Again, it would also involve looking at the relationship. So when we talk of a adverse event and a reaction, the next thing that needs to be considered is the causality assessment. Right. So when I say causality assessment, it is derived from the term causal or causing, right? The English word we say, cause. So the same thing, it is derived from that. Causality assessment would do what? It would try to establish the link between the drug and the event, right? So we may use different methodologies to arrive at the relationship between the drug and the event, right? The next thing that is required in when doing pharmacovigilance is labeling. Now, labeling can be again of depending upon the phase. We are in the trial phase, development phase. We may have different labels. Like in the trial, you will have a. We've covered maybe in a clinical trial session about investigator brochures, right? The protocol is prepared for a trial on how to do a study, and then you would have a investigator brochure. Now, the investigator brochure in the trial phase will act like a label for you. So it will tell you about all the previous knowledge about the drug from its preclinical data and maybe the phase 1 study or the phase 2 study, right? Based on that, that information of various development phases will be included in the investigator brochure in the trial phase. That will be the label. Investigator brochure becomes the label, and whatever is there in that label, based on the, again, like I told you, the frequency or the nature of the events, right? That means the severity or the milder form, or maybe again the seriousness. So we look at all those criteria and then decide whether an event is altogether new or it is a existing event. So again, like I told you, what happens is that the labeling would involve including of all the information which is already known. So for bigger pharma companies, multinational companies, you would have a company data sheet, developmental company data sheet, which will include all the information from various trials done worldwide on various indications, right, for a particular compound or a molecule. So that will become your label. Now, when you market a drug, you will have different labels. Like US, you might have a prescribing information. Europe, you will have a summary of product characteristic, a product label based on which the clinician normally decides. So you would have seen when you go and buy a product out of shelf, or when you buy a prescription product, there is an insert within the package which will tell you about the indication and the expected adverse reactions, and also what are the warnings or the precautions that you need to take. So that will be the labeling of pharmacovigilance, right? Again, so these are some of the concepts that you would come across, terminologies which are used in pharmacovigilance, right? Okay, let's move to the next slide. What are the aims and objectives? Now that brings us to again deciding on what do we want to achieve from pharmacovigilance. So what our main aim is to improve the benefit of the use of medicine so that it will outweigh the risks. Thus, it can safeguard the patient population. So you would have noticed, even with this mention earlier, Dr. Vipra was mentioning of the COVID vaccination, which was being developed by various companies. With Pfizer developing COVID vaccine for US, there were events which were noted like reversible facial palsy. Yes. So again, such events were a trigger point for many authorities. Even in India, the regulatory authority said, before you actually start to market this drug in India, we would want you to do a specific study so that we are safeguarding our patients, right, from these effects. We know what are the expected events, right? Before giving a approval, authorities can impose this on the companies, right? There could have been other reasons as well, like the storage conditions required for the vaccine were quite different. You had to maintain below normal temperature, and with India tropical climate, that becomes a challenge, right? Okay, so then again, we go back to the concept of why we need pharmacovigilance is because what we are trying to achieve, we are trying to safeguard our patients, and for that, we need to ensure that whatever risks are being noted, those are lesser always, and they are outweighed by the benefits of the medicine, the effects we are expecting, right? So the objective is again to create a nationwide system for patient safety reporting, also to identify and analyze any new signals from the reported cases. When I say a new signal, now signal is a term which is used in computers and computation, where we are looking at some patterns that stand out, right, from the normal. What we are trying to do in signal in pharmacovigilance is that we try to look at the adverse drug reactions, say, in a period of time. Within that period, how many events have been reported where they were totally new and these were not noted earlier, and there is some relationship between the drug and the event, that is their reactions, right? So we try to analyze all of them together and then identify what are alerts that you may need to take care of. So examples being Nimucilide. Why it has been banned worldwide? It got banned because of long term use of Nimucilide causing temporal fractures, right? So this signal was identified by the authorities, and then the the notification went to all the authorization holders, right? So then they had to decide. The risks were more, the benefits were less, right? So benefits were that you are using it for reducing the inflammation and pain, right? But the risks were more. So then eventually it was decided that you cannot sell this product. Yes. Okay. Again, so what we are trying to do is that we are analyzing the benefit risk ratio of the marketed medications, right? And then we generate the evidence based on the safety of medicines. So whatever information we are getting, we are trying to generate evidence for that. We are collecting all the various sources. So we are looking at the clinical trial data, we are looking at the post-marketed data. We may also have some planned targeted studies to look at a particular risk, right? The authorities can impose on a company to do a targeted risk. Say for instance, that we covered maybe isotretinoin. I told you in the beginning in the poem. So isotretinoin is used to treat acne, but then isotretinoin is also a teratogenic compound, right? It is known to be teratogenic. So for that risk, authorities worldwide, including US, Europe, they have brought in risk minimization activities where you have to take the decision of how the risk can be reduced of the teratogenicity. So what they do, they plan out studies. They can ask for either interventional studies or non-interventional programs. So they run a program called as the pregnancy prevention program, right? So this pregnancy prevention program, you cannot take isotretinoin without enrolling if you are a woman with a childbearing potential, right? So or a lactating woman, right? So they will be excluded from taking that medicine. So that way we are avoiding the risk, right? Again, running such programs is, involves time, cost. So there are implications to it, right? And if you are supposed to do such a program, you will do it at centers which can do, testing of pregnancy time and again, because naturally, if you have a patient of childbearing potential, maybe she was not pregnant when she started the program, but she may become pregnant during the course. So to prevent that risk, you may need to keep checking, right? You may need to do periodic tests to ensure that she doesn't get pregnant while taking the medication, right? And then, like I said, you have to generate the evidences based on these studies that you do, and various collection programs that you do. Event monitorings also, many times you would want to monitor a event based on the prescription of the doctor. So you will not do any intervention, you are just noting when a doctor sends out prescription, how many patients have used it, how many of them have had events, right? So that is again collecting evidence of safety, then to support regulatory agencies in decision making process. So the eventual intent is to equip the authorities for ensuring safety of the patients, right? Then to communicate the safety information on the use of medicines to various stakeholders to minimize the risks. So like I said, if suppose there is a risk, now again, with isotretinoin, these risks were there. So how the agency can ensure that these risks are taken care of? Maybe the marketing authorization holder has to send out letters additionally, to the healthcare professionals to keep a check or to ensure that the patients who are enrolling are not pregnant. Yes. So then you would have some more activities to minimize those risks, right? So that is again communication on the safety information, on the use of medicines, right? Then and we are then what we are doing is we are making it to emerge as a national center of excellence for pharmacovigilance activities. So you would find that India, we have Pharmacovigilance Program of India, which is being run under the aegis of Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, right? And they are the body which is responsible for collecting adverse drug reactions across the globe, across India, right? And pardon me. So again, all these events from various states and nodal centers will flow into the central repository with Pharmacovigilance Program of India, and they are they are using WHO database for capturing all these adverse reactions and notifying it to WHO, right? So then eventually that will be again collaboration between various national centers for exchange of the information and for data management, right? So these are the intents and the aim of pharmacovigilance. So one thing which was said in a meeting at Geneva by Dr. Vladimir Lepakhin was that dying from a disease is sometimes unavoidable. We can't do anything about it, right? But to die from a medicine is unacceptable. So if you see this emoticon, this vision which is shown, the patient running away from this syringe. So you would have seen, people trying to avoid vaccination, the COVID vaccine, right? Only because of the fear of dying with the medicine. Yes. So this is something, dying from the disease is something that we cannot do anything about. So if COVID is causing deaths, we can't do anything about it. We can only work on getting a new drug, right? But then if patients die because of a medicine, that is unacceptable, right? So that is the basis why pharmacovigilance has been brought in, the evolution of pharmacovigilance, the trigger point for it, right? Okay. Again, just a moment, I'm trying to. So we have, various roles within the structure of pharmacovigilance to reduce the overall morbidity and mortality and prevent medicine related issues. So you would have reporters could be anyone, they can be doctors, they can be pharmacists, even consumers. Now when I say consumers, so they can be patients, they can be their relatives, they can be their lawyers, they can be their coroners, right, who are taking care of them, they can be their guardians like children, right? So children would not consume a medicine directly, the parents will buy it for them, right? So they will be your consumers, your doctors, your again healthcare professionals, pharmacists, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, right, the lab technicians or other supporting staff, right? They would be a reporter, they would send a report, and then sorry, so when a report comes across, you would look for the side effects and the quality of concerns, what are the errors, so we will try to detect and generate. And within that, then you would, for this you would require structure in place. So you need to have manufacturers, you need to have hospitals and institutions, right, who can detect and generate these reports, right? Then again you would have evaluators like the pharmacists or medical specialists, pharmacologists, epidemiologists, who will also evaluate and send the data, right, relating to common effects or side effects, as you call it in common parlance, or adverse events or adverse reactions. So those will be collated, and then you would do an initial analysis. So it will involve causality analysis and determination of the risk. So what are the risks in maybe we may need to do some epidemiologic studies to look at a particular subset of population, right, to establish the association further. Again, these can be done at various pharmacovigilance centers, or therapeutic committees, or safety advisory committees. So they can do the analysis and determine the risk, right? Then eventually you will have decision making and appropriate action taken. So like I was explaining to you, the product labels, you have the package inserts, those will need to be modified, amended to include the new safety information. So whatever new that you get to know, which is now a identified signal, which is a valid signal, so those will come into your label, right, your package insert, whether in terms of warning of a drug, or maybe a precaution, or accordingly some risk which is identified, we have put in measures, risk minimization and management is done. So those are put in your package insert, right? You may also need to recall the product. So authorities or the industry on their own, or maybe the advisory committee or the professional groups, may recommend this decision of withdrawing a product, of recalling a product. So all the tragedies which have happened over a period of time, they've also caused all these products like rosiglitazone causing cardiovascular events, was one of the reasons why the company had to recall the products, right? They were the reason why the product had to be recalled, to prevent the medicine related problems and reduce the morbidity and mortality. So the overall intention of having these various you know people, processes and structures is to prevent the decision making and to prevent the harm to patients, right? So that is the intent, to ensure that the balance between the efficacy and the harm that happens is always there, right? The benefit and the risk proportion. Okay. Now, when I say, pharmacovigilance life cycle, it would mean the product life cycle, right from the developmental phase, that is the marketed phase, the trial phase, and the post marketed phase. So the pharmacovigilance will be effective always from the time that we start marketing, from the time that we start developing a product in humans, trials, right, to say the post marketed phase, when we are selling the product and we may want to do some specific prescription event monitoring, or some specific targeted studies to look at a known signal or a event, yes, to collect more evidence about it. So you would have different documents required at all of these phases. So initially, when you start to market a drug or when you are doing a trial, you will have individual cases coming to you. Now these will be again reports from individual patients or sources, where you will have some reaction reported to a drug event, right? And then based on this, you may do aggregate analysis. Now in the aggregate analysis, what we do is we try to cumulatively analyze all the individual cases in a period, in a time frame, defined time frame, right? And based on the requirements of the regulators worldwide, we will have different aggregate reports. Like we will have a, in case of marketed products, we will have a periodic safety update report, which is now replaced by the periodic benefit risk evaluation report, right? So which we just discussed about, the benefits should outweigh the risks, right? So now we will have, in the post marketed phase, we will have these periodic benefit risk evaluation reports. In the US, they have their own specific formats, which they call as the PADRs, the periodic adverse drug event reports, right? Again, during the development phase, in the trial phase, you may have the development safety update report, which is again annually given till the time you are running a trial, right? And also, like Dr. Vipra was saying, so when you are doing end of trial, you may have end of trial study reports, where again you may have to analyze all the data relating to safety of that product, right? So again, depending upon the requirement, those will be done. And we also have a requirement for signal detection, like I explained to you. So what we are looking at is the unexpected events which were not there in your label, either the investigator brochure in trials, or the prescribing information, or SPC in case of marketed products, right? So we will look at totally new or a changed frequency of ADRs, which were known, but now they are more, right, in that particular class of drug. Now we are noticing them more with the drug. So then these we will try to detect and analyze, right, for a particular indication. Then, like I explained to you, so it will also involve risk management at various phases. If the risks are in trial phase, right, so then we will try to minimize the risks in the trial. If these are in the marketed phase, we will try to reduce those risks in the marketed phase. So risk management plans are also applicable across the product life cycle, right? So a risk management plan is a document that will again describe how the safety and efficacy are ensured for a product. So we will do a plan and ensure that the product is safe for use, right? So these are end-to-end pharmacovigilance cycle. So like I was explaining to you, pharmacovigilance is the right option for you, as far as not just in terms of safety. You also have options. This is a growing and evolving field. So globally, if we look at the growth of pharmacovigilance market, you would see the global PV and drug safety market is anticipated by around US dollar 262.02 million, right? And this is somewhere in 2027. So, and if you look at the current rate, which was there in 2018, it was around 151 million. So it is almost doubling in a way, right? And the pharmacovigilance and drug safety package market is again calculable to grow with a compound annual growth rate of 6.4% from 19 to 27, right? So you can see the exponential growth which is expected in pharmacovigilance. Now let's look at some of the scopes that you might have, and the packages I would say in the industry are best in class. when it comes to medicine, right? So you would have a starting position of somewhere around 2.16 to around 5 lakhs per annum, and going up to the level of around 75 lakhs or even a crore, right? So it would depend upon the position that you have within the organization. I can give you examples of people who are quite successful. The best example being, Novartis, the head, Dr. Vas. So he is again, now gone to the level of head. He was the head of pharmacovigilance at Novartis, right? So Vas Narasimhan, right? So these would be people who have, grown up the ladder, gone from, project management level to the level of the company head, right? So there is innumerable scope, and there are no leaps and bounds in professional growth when it comes to pharmacovigilance. It is one of the best paying domains in safety, or say in medicine, right? And again, with people for pharmacovigilance, you need to have training, right? And people need to be trained in pharmacovigilance, and these requirements have been, put in by the various regulations brought in by authorities in Europe and in US. In fact, the first module of the European guidance, which is the good vigilance practice module, talks of the importance of training your people, whether they are, involved in pharmacovigilance or supporting pharmacovigilance also. So even, people like those who are your receptionist, they may receive an adverse drug reaction. Or even, people who are non-pharmacovigilance person, like your marketing professionals who go and meet the doctors, right, to promote the product, can receive an adverse reaction. So you will need to train them as well, right? So even for PV people, you need to have adequate qualification and training. Pharmacovigilance people also need to be trained, and also non-pharmacovigilance people in the company, in any pharma company, are required to train themselves, right? So trained people can find excellent employment in, again, the pharmaceutical companies and the biotech companies, also in research, contract research organizations, right? The service providers. Then it could also be, various other, organizations like Paraxel and, CROs who work on a particular aspect of research. They would be, having positions for pharmacovigilance professionals. Also regulatory authorities, whether, EMA, FDA, PMDA, or so EMA in Europe, FDA in US, the PMDA in Japan, right? Or the Australian agency TGA, and Indian regulator CDSCO, right? So you would have requirements at these places. Even the pharmacovigilance program of India, at being run at India by the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, you would have positions there, requirement for trained people there. You also have requirement in the clinical research organizations, like I told you, right? You have requirements in medical colleges and hospitals now, because again, these are nodal centers. So like I told you, the WHO work, the World Health Organization program, pharmacovigilance program of India, is being run through the aegis of IPC. But you have nodal centers across various institutions, medical colleges, hospitals, right? So these will be your nodal centers, which will collect local adverse reactions and send it to the central office, which is based out of the Ghaziabad location, IPC, right? And now, for your knowledge, again, our Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission PVPI program is not just the nodal center for India. We are actually the nodal office for the Asia location, right? So that is the level of extent of, opportunities which are available. And then again, knowledge processing outsourcing, companies like, Accenture or Covance or Cognizant or Wipro or Tata Consultancy Services, right? PPD, Apsar. There are some companies like these who are, working on knowledge process outsourcing, specialized work, relating to pharmacovigilance, right? So you have scope in all of these, right? Again, the course that content that we cover here at CliniMind is again aligned to the practical aspects and to the best of benchmark in the industry, right? So the course covers each and every phase or the aspect of pharmacovigilance, whether it is the basics of pharmacovigilance or the documents that you are required to prepare in companies, in major pharma companies, like the SOPs or their work instructions, right? Also, you have a requirement in Europe, which is of the pharmacovigilance system master file, where you are required to maintain, a living document at European location of all the requirements of pharmacovigilance system, right from the structure to the operations to your training to the people who are involved, right? So that is required to be put in. Then you have regulatory agencies and guidelines that we will be covering, various global requirements. As part of the course, we will also cover how you will face an audit if there is an internal quality audit planned by your internal quality assurance department in a company, or maybe a third party doing an audit in a company, and also the regulatory authority inspections. So how you should be ready about it, what you need to do when the inspector comes at a site, how you will conduct those, right? What are the responses which are given, how those are responded to the authority. Then we will also look at the real practical aspects of case processing, of how you will process individual reports, adverse events, right? And then how we will code them using the medical dictionary for regulatory activities in various databases. So it is safety easy, again, database that we would use. uh, then the narrative writing, so we will talk of how you have to write the narrative of a case. When you get a report, what is the sequence that needs to be followed while writing the narrative. Then the causality of what needs to be done to assess the relationship of the drug and the event. What could be the various methods used to do causality, right? You will also look at various practical requirements of doing literature screening for finding out of adverse reactions. And again, local requirements, what are the requirements in few countries specifically, and how do we do that, how do we process those cases again. And like I explained to you earlier, it's the aggregate reports, which could be your periodic safety update reports, or the development safety update reports, or the annual safety reports which are made at the time of a trial, right? So all those will be looked at in the aggregate report. We will also try to cover the parts of signal detection. How do you detect the signal? What are the different patterns that you will look at? What are the various methodologies which are done, right? Then about the risk management plans, how those are developed. How do you identify a risk? How do you categorize a risk as potential? What are false signals which you will refute in your risk management? And what are the various activities that you will develop as part of the risk minimization, right? So all that will be covered in the risk management. We also have vaccine pharmacovigilance based on the requirements in biopharmaceuticals. So like with COVID requirement, you would have vaccine pharmacovigilance covered. And the device, we have a specific field now dedicated for devices, like pharmacovigilance. It has been termed as materiovigilance, right? So materiovigilance will deal with the vigilance related to devices, right? And then we also look at how you will mine data from the database. If you have to prepare reports or submit safety data, and social media analytics. So we will also focus on what are the various social medias, from where you can get these reports, how those are analyzed, right? So the course covers all these aspects from industry benchmark, right? And what we do as part of your access, you are given access to the safety database for a month. Again, students can process cases, in safety database real time, and they will be able to do what they will be eventually doing in companies. So it gives you a beforehand advantage of knowing what you are supposed to do, right? It gives the confidence to the industry and to people who will hire you, that yes, this person is already trained, is already equipped. I may need to invest less when it comes to training that person, because he already has the background knowledge, right? He already has the background experience. Then the sessions from industry experts will be conducted on extensive knowledge about pharmacovigilance industry. So again, that will provide you with the prospects and requirements at the industry, right? And again, we will have more emphasis on the practical training aspects, like it will be more on how live examples are there of case studies. We'll try to associate it with the real life world situations, right? Explain you by mixing theory with practical learning, right? So that is how our program has been designed, and we are training students not only to get jobs in the pharmacovigilance field, but eventually our objective is to make them better professionals, right? So that they can excel in the field. So this is the objective again of the course material, and it is up to date again as per the industry norms and the regulatory guidelines. We keep updating with the regulations. Like I said, pharmacovigilance is an evolving field. So the more the information that we get, we keep that, we keep incorporating that into our curriculum, right? So like I said, we would give you a demo on the safety database, which is Safety Easy from AB Cube. So these would be again a part of our pharmacovigilance, and that sums up our offerings at pharmacovigilance, at Cliniminds. Again, most welcome with all your queries. If you have any doubts, we would address these by the session. Yep. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gaurav, sir, and very wonderful, informative information provide to our students who willing to career for this pharmacovigilance and clinical research. So, not last but least, this is our last slide to giving the basic information how we are working. So, Cliniminds established in 2004, and over the 8,500 students we already trained and placed in the various sectors of clinical research, data management, and the pharmacovigilance. Not only in India, across the India is also, because we have international students also who need to learn this program and get the placements in their own countries and all. So we are offering the upskilling programs, cooperative trainings to the multinational companies and consultants who are working in this clinical research and pharmacovigilance sector and data management sector. Our mission is to establish a world-class education and training institution that offer the widest range of high-quality life and health sciences skills, professional training programs, and business solutions. And our mission is to Clinimal is committed to provide the highest quality training, education, and management solution and develop superior human resource for the global life sciences and healthcare industry. And Clinimax is only nothing like its own brand. We are awarded and accredited from various bodies, and that is the LSSS, which is, you can see the logo is mentioned on the presentation. I'm sure that everybody can see that. So LSSDC is basically, it's under the cover with the Ministry of Skill Development, Government of India. The full form is a Life Sciences Sector Skill Development Counseling. This is a new initiative by the Skill India Programming to give certified clinical research pharmacovigilance courses, which is Cliniminds is the first only institute, I would say, who certified LSSDC body under the National Scale Development Corporation. So you will be get the certificate, and definitely your final exam would be conducted on that website. So that's after completion of your program, you will also get the LSSDC certificate. And the second certificate, which is our executive for USA body, that is Accreditation Council for Clinical Research Education. And so it's a 2 certificate we get. And we also had one more certificate in the March batch onwards. That is the internship. You will all person who take the movements, the program like clinical research, pharmacovigilance, or clinical research, clinical data management. So during the program, they will also work with the certificate as an internship certificate of their respective domain by the Think Kind. It's a leading PV consultancy and clinical research organization, and we will provide the certificate by the Think Kind. And we continuously getting the awards from the various award agencies in 2011, 2020, like ASSOCHAM, Brand Academies, Economic Times. So we are established and we are not new in this industry, and make sure that everyone will get a placement till they get job. This is the promise of Clinimise we are offering, and last, I would say last 3-4 months, 100 plus placements we already conducted during this pandemic era. And you can see our website www.clinimise.com. You can go to the placement section. So there is a separate link is available. The placements, recent placement during the COVID situations. So lots of placement we already added, and new placements we are going to update very soon on the website. So placement is guaranteed, assured. Interviews will be provided to you who choose the clinical research, clinical data management, or with the clinical research pharmacovigilance. So respective industry, we will give the placement interviews. And here, our technology partners are also work with us. So that's why we're able to provide the hands-on training on the various softwares like ABQ, Safety, Clinovo, Dot Compliance, Innovate Research, Think Guide, CRQA, Medimites, lots of and Vera. Lots of knowledge partners are with, or collaborate with us so that we are able to provide a high-class training education for this clinical research, pharmacovigilance, and clinical data management. So basically, our batch is in the March, which is going to start by 21st and 22nd of March. We have 2 options for all of you. A person, fresher, currently not doing any job, they can choose our full-time program. There is a 3 months full-time only, Monday to Friday, 5 days regular classes, e-classes, live Zoom classes to be conducted. Same like today, we are going to live session. So there is a live audio, video session will be conducted. And after that, you also get the recorded version too, so that you can revise your lectures and all. This video will already uploaded on YouTube also, so anyone can watch it again. But if a person enroll for the program, so they will get through their LMS system, learning management system. So they will get the recorded videos, soft study note materials like source study materials, PPT notes, all available on their LMS system. Person who working, they can join our weekend batch. There is a Saturday, Sunday classes only, live classes, and duration for 6 months. The number mentioned below there for the WhatsApp and call, you can call to us anytime. So we can, if anyone wants to take a personal counseling, one-to-one counseling regarding their confusions and all for the, so they can go with that. We can call to us. So if anybody, since from last 2 hours, you have a very great patience to listen all our lectures and trainers. So now this is an open platform to all of you. If you have any doubt, any query, you can ask it from here. So I can help you in that. Or about any technical issue query you have regarding the particular clinical research point of view and the pharmacovigilance, our faculty trainer is also available here. They can answer you.
Yes, sir, we have a question. What will be the suitable program for pharmacy professionals?
See, all the pharmacies professionals, they can choose the program Advanced Postgraduate Diploma in Clinical Research and Pharmacovigilance. And no worry about the placement. We are here to give you a placement options in the pharmacovigilance industry like DSA profile, DSA means Drug Safety Associate, Pharmacovigilance Officer, Clinical Trial Associate profile, Trainee Research Associate profiles in the organizations.
Another program is, what is the right program for MSc Chemistry students?
MSc chemistry students, there is a definitely advanced postgraduate diploma in clinical research and clinical data management. In pharmacovigilance, the company prefer the B Pharms, M Pharms, and medical background. So all the life sciences students who did the BSc, MSc, or the PhD in biotech or any other PhDs, they can move to industry like clinical research and clinical data management. All the students who are B Pharms, M Pharms, PharmD, BDS, MDS, MBBS, PPT, BHMS, BAMS, any medical students, they can choose the career as a clinical research and pharmacovigilance.
Right. And Rajat sir, just wanted to add. So Gaurav this side. Now,
Yeah, please.
somebody had asked about MSc chemistry person. You may be hired depending upon some KPOs who have a requirement for training. They may involve you with a drug safety associate position, but then the growth aspects would limit you. So the more advisable course, like Rajat sir was saying, would we go for a clinical data management or a
Clinical
or a
research.
clinical research associate profile?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gaurav. Yes, definitely. Some you can see on your Naukri or that some other portal that can mention about MSc student for the pharmacovigilance. But that's definitely Mr. Gaurav said very correct. But there is a limited opportunities to grow further because in the pharmacovigilance where will be as a basic knowledge of pharmacology and the PKPDs of the, so that must be covered in the B pharmacy and M pharm students. So they always be upfront with you if any competition for the future progressions in the career wise. So make your right choice to go with your clinical research, clinical data management. There is a exponential growth in there also. Vinayak, any questions?
Yes, sir. There is one more question from Amina. What is going to be the class timings?
So class timing would be in the daytime.
Yeah. So Amina, it's a 3 months full-time program. The sessions would be live Monday to Friday for 3 to 4 hours each daily. And in the weekend program, the sessions would be on Saturday and Sundays.
Timing would be
It would also be a 3-hour
daytime,
session. The timings would be in between 10, 11 to in between 10 to 4.
Yes,
10 a.m.
definitely.
in between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yes, and every time you will be get the schedule on your mail previously. So how the batches is going to be by next week? What was the schedule for the clinical research, clinical data management, pharmacovigilance? So you can watch, see your schedule, and you can connect. Any questions?
I
There is a
see. Yeah, I see a question, Rajat sir, saying that is pharmacovigilance a totally software related job? So, like I was explaining, with the upcoming field of technology, coming in all spheres of life, including safety, and with the enablement of electronic reporting to various authorities worldwide of the adverse drug reactions, and because of the ease and the mode of communication being faster electronically, databases are the way forward. Yes, but that is not the only requirement. You would need to have training, like I said, relating to how you would process cases, how you would do association of the drug and the events, right? So you need to have medical knowledge, you need to have background information and training. So that is the prerequisite, right?
yes, definitely. And now that there is no one company doing the paperwork job. Everywhere the reporting system.
Of the drug and the events, right? So you need to have medical knowledge, you need to have background information, and
Yeah. So, next question by Mr. Prasad, what will be the package of the CRA? See, the initial level companies always prefer the in-house CRA profiles or the junior research associate profiles or the clinical trial associate profile. The salary would be starting as a 2.5 to 3.5 lakhs per annum. The final salary would be structured and by the company after giving your interviews. Next question by the Mohammed Sahib: is pharmacovigilance is totally software? Yes, definitely. Mr. Gaurav already clear to you, and definitely, if you are planning to work with the multinational companies and in this time, so definitely every work sector using the electronic system to reporting. Now, we also connect with the reporting through the Zoom application. So there is a paper working and all. It's not possible in the pharmacovigilance when you're going to report globally, not only for India. You have to report to the US. You have to report to Europe countries and all. So everything could be in the electronic transmission possible. What is the salary of present employees? So I would say the last 2-3 months, IQVIA, we placed over 30 plus students in IQVIA. They're getting the salary that minimum is a fresher 3.5 lakhs per annum. There is a question from the Isha: how will hands-on training going on the online software? Yeah, definitely for the hands-on training, we will share the link for the software. Now, the every software comes with a cloud-based software. You don't require to download any software on your laptop or desktop. We will give you a link. Same as today, we will give you a link for the Zoom meeting. You just click on that and directly come to the Zoom site, and you are able to attend the Zoom session. Same thing, the AD Safety or the Cleanse Off, there is a link we will share with you, and we will create the password access to you for the 1 month, so that you can use that password link as a software training for the 1 month on your own laptop or desktop, and we will give you a case studies for the practicing. There is a question by the Praveen Shinde: is clinical data management is about database? Yes, definitely. Clinical data management is the database of the clinical database. Whatever during the clinical trials, whatever the data is generating, like through the EDC, through ECRF, through source node, through the lab reports, through the ADR reportings, all these data is called as the database. And clinical data management team have to check the quality of the data. Is very important for the data validation and data execution profiles. So the clinical data management part doing the same thing.
Sir, we have one more question. What if I miss the class? The question is asked by Anjali.
Yeah,
So,
if you miss the class, definitely you will be get the same time the recorded session of the that class one. So you can read, go to a learning management system portal. We will give you a user access and password, and you can watch the recorded session of that class. And after that, in the upcoming live session, you can come and you can ask and you can clear your doubts for the previous sessions.
thank you. Sir, one more question is there. What is the difference? How is the difference between a B Farm and farm salary in pharmacovigilance?
Yes, Pathare, yes, definitely there is a nothing difference in the fresher level. If you go with the B farms or M farm, hardly 20 to 30,000 per annum would be difference, which is only depend upon the performance during the interview. There is a marginal difference in the fresher salary.
Yeah, and Rajat sir, just to add, so in the future prospects, definitely you would see a difference in terms of the major pharma companies, like bigger operators like Novartis and major pharma companies. They would prefer to have people who are masters, right, and with more experience. So eventually, it will show up once you gain your experience in the domain. But yes, like at the entry point, there may not be much of difference in terms of the structure that is offered. Yes, again, there could be a range of around 20-30,000.
Nimit Sani, so my question is the drug consultant post. Sorry, I'm not getting your point. Drug consultant post. If you can unmute your mic and you can speak up. Mr. Nimit, are you there?
Yes, sir. Next question is when the placements are done in the program?
Placement definitely start immediately after the completion of the classes. If you choose the full-time program, then 3 months, and if you choose the weekend program, it requires 6 months. And placement pushes that continue till you get job. This is nothing like you will be get only one option or two options. Till you get job, we will continue to assist with the placement interviews. We will share your CVs to the respective companies and provide your interview arrangements.
One more
Isha,
from Isha. Is there any
yes,
internship program in 3 months
yes, we are
course?
offering the internship certificate in the program. If you choose the weekend, you also get the internship certificate from Thinkai. If you choose the full-time, internship certificate from Thinkai will be provided to you. That means there is a 3 certificate we will offer. Two certificate, one from LSSDC, Government of India body, one certificate from the USA body, and one certificate from the internship Thinkai.
Yeah, if anyone else have some questions, you can either put on chat or unmute. Sir, one more if
Yeah, there is a question by Vijay. If already job working holder, they finish this course and change the job, means what is the salary to them? Sir, definitely the job depend upon your professional, what you currently doing. Because in clinical research and pharmacovigilance, a person do any like other job like marketing job or quality assurance job or medical practicing job as a BTS, they are not be considered as a technical person. Technically, you always be a fresher for this industry, so you can assume that you will be get the fresher salary only. The next question whether placement will be open for all the students, only the students who complete the course. I would say that for to all the students who enrolled in our program, but definitely who complete the course more confidence to appear for the interview. A person who left the course in between the program, how they can confident to answer the clinical research and pharmacovigilance questions during the interview. So this is all clear about your study seriousness. Because at the last of the completion of the program, you all of have to appear for the interview. At your place, no one going to other one to give you an interview. You have to go for the interview. You have to, as a telephonic interview or the face-to-face interview, you have to face it. There is another question. What is the difference between PG diploma in clinical research and pharmacovigilance, which is for 1 year and certification courses? Anjali, Ms. Anjali, I will request to go through the process which are provided to you for the clinic for the 3 months, what we are going to cover in the 3 months program, because this is the skill enhancement program. That means your basic qualification is important to enter in this industry. This 1 year certificate or 3 month certificate is not going to give you. If you go with the 1 year certification program, what they are going to give you a lectures during what they complete the 1 year, we are going to complete in 3 months. That means you saving your salary for next 9 months. If you go with the 1 year program, definitely the charge is expensive than the 3 months program. You have to spend the 1 year for complete 1 year. After that, you can see the placement would happen or not. So a person who did the course in 3 months and starting the job at the end of the 4 month, so definitely always be upfront with you.
one question is job profile in the IT companies. So in clinical data management, you join as a clinical data analyst, and in pharmacovigilance at entry level, you join as a drug safety associate.
Regarding the fee structure and all, after this demo session, we will send the complete course information with the fee structure to all of you and on your mail ID, respective mail IDs. If you have any queries, you can call us to one-to-one counseling. The basics, yes.
Yeah, sir, please continue.
Yeah. So I would say the salary the fee structure we are offering for the clinical research and pharmacovigilance, that is for the 79,000 plus taxes, and clinical research, clinical data management is the same as 79,000 plus taxes. taxes at 80% GST, with 3 certification and assured placement interviews.
Deepak ji, you can contact us. You can either connect with us on call or WhatsApp on the given number on the screen. You can take the screenshot and connect with us today or tomorrow morning, anytime you like.
Any more question, Vinayak?
Yeah, it's done, I think. If anyone has any queries, you can either unmute or... Rahul will share the course details on your mail ID in some time. Think it's... Yeah. That's what we can add.
Yeah, 3 certification, one from LSSDC, so Life Sciences Sector Counseling, under the Ministry of Skill Development, under this National Skill Development Corporation. One certificate from the USA body, Accreditation Council for Clinical Research Education, and one internship certificate from ThinkEye. I'm sure all of you do this demo session, they get the major idea about how Cliniva is going to be study, giving the lectures and quality training related to the software trainings and the hands-on training on software. You can compare to anyone, or if you want to go to check with anyone, you can compare with that.
Okay, sir, questions are done now. Other questions.
Sorry, there is no participant certificate for the demonstration. It's free for your knowledge, for your information, for your career perspective, and this is the value added for you after completion of your graduation and post graduation. You can think about if you want to enter in this industry.
Yes, Shweta. Yes, we placement. Sir, we have question on placements.
Yes, definitely. We will provide you the 100% placement interviews till you get job with your respective course. If you choose the clinical research pharmacovigilance, you will get the placement options in clinical research and pharmacovigilance as a drug safety associate, as a clinical trial associate profile, in-house CRA, junior trainee research associate profile. The salary structure is a fresher, I would say, already told in this queries, that is a 2.5 to 3.6 lakhs. For further placement information, you can visit our website www.cliniminds.com. You can check our placement sections, how the placement getting placed, in which company they are getting placed. Every details are mentioned, already uploaded on our website. I repeated, our website is www.cliniminds.com.
Okay, Rajat sir, we can now end the session.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for be with us for the last 2 hours to giving this informative demonstration. Thank you, Vipra ma'am. Thank you, Gaurav sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, and we wish to see more people joining the course and benefiting from our knowledge and expertise in the domain. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.